Okay, well, we'll get started. The good thing is that this will be it's recorded, so we could share it with others too if they want to learn how to use our controller website, including learning about the current city budget and also how to use our checkbook website. So thank you to everyone who is here right now, and we will begin. My name is Kenneth Mejia. I am our Los Angeles City Controller. Diana Chang is our Director of Communications. And we also have American Sign Language Interpretation with Kim and Sophia through a contractor through the Department of Disability. So thank you so much. And we also have a caption or two, as we could see below as well. So thank you to everyone for making this as accessible as possible. All right. So the purpose of today's teaching is to teach people how to access our current budget or any budget, but we will be using the current city budget as our example, how to read some of the most important points, especially the points that are talked about the most in the media, and how to look up information on there. I'm also towards the later half of the discussion, I'm going to go over how to use our controller's checkbook website. If you ever wanted to know how much we're spending on a certain vendor, you can use our checkbook website, which shows all payments and expenses to a third-party vendor. This doesn't include payroll though, because that's internal, but it is for any contracts, any equipment, any expenses paid for to third-party vendors. So I will go over how to use the checkbook website later. But first, let us begin and go over the budget. So I will share my screen. Okay. Okay, great. Can everyone see my screen? If I get a thumb, yep. Good job. Thank you, Diana, for the head nod. So if you visit our website at controller.lacity.gov, you can find a lot of good information on the city of LA. And if you look at the very top, you can see a navigation bar that says budgets, and you want to click on the one that says budgets and click here. So the city of LA operates on a fiscal year, and it goes from July 1st to June 30th. So the current fiscal year that we are in is fiscal year 2022 to 2023. So that started July 1st, 2022, and it ends June 30th, 2023. That is the current fiscal year that we're in. When the city council and the mayor approve the budget, it comes to our office to then appropriate the funds based on their approvals. And we keep a copy of all approved budgets here. So you could see all the approved budgets going back to 2005, 2006. So I'm going to click on the current budget. So 2022, 2023. So this is our current city budget. It is a lot of pages, obviously, 631 pages for our entire city. The beginning of the city budget includes information, table of contents, the mayor's message, economic and demographic information, pretty much just information about the city of LA and how the process works, how it's presented, what are our financial policies, what are the performance measures or organization chart, and the budget calendar. I would say the most popular uses of the city budget that gets cited all the time or people talk about all the time is Exhibit G. And pretty much all the exhibits right here. I think a lot of people pay attention to how much money we're going to spend, and these exhibits are actually a good place to start. They're pretty high level, and they give you a basic understanding of where our money is going to go. So when people ask me and they say, Kenneth, how much are we spending on each department? How much are we budgeting to spend on each department? or they want to know, Kenneth, how much are we spending this current fiscal year? Like, what is our city budget? So some of the tricks that I like to do in this entire recording will be me teaching you shortcuts on how to look for stuff. So Exhibit G gives you the answer to those questions as to how much are we going to spend this, on this fiscal year for this budget for these departments. So what you could do is you can just type in Control F to do to find the search bar, and you can just type in your Exhibit G, and then you just want to find out where Exhibit G is located. Okay, so let's find it out. Okay, so as you could see here, we found Exhibit G. So Exhibit G gives you a full breakdown and accounting of the current fiscal year budget. So if you wanted to know, Kenneth, how much or what is the total city budget right now? You can go all the way to the very bottom where the total rows are, and you can see that our total city budget is 11,755,000,000 or $11.8 billion for this current fiscal year. Now, the way it works is our city budget and for departments they consist of two things. They consist of what is the operational budget of a department, and then what are the total um, other allocated costs to those departments. And if you add the operational budget of each department plus all other costs related to that department, that's how you get this total direct cost of operations. So a lot of the media only like to cite the operational budget, but if you wanted to know how much is each department slated to get in this budget, you would look at the total budget, which would be the far column on the right here. And this shows you everything in terms of their operational budget, which is under the budget appropriations column, and also all other indirect costs or costs associated with that department. So, using an example, let's use the city controller's office as an example of what our budget is. So if someone were to ask me, say, Kenneth, what is your city controller budget? So I would go to Exhibit G and pretty much go all the way to the right, and I would say it's $54.5 million. This is our total budget at the city controller's office. And I would say, this is our operational budget. So you might be asking, well, Kenneth, what is the operational budget consist of, right? So if you wanted to know what this 21,558,000 operational budget for our department is, it could easily be shown in the exhibits shown above. So let's just scroll up a bit. Let's show where those are. So let's go to Exhibit A, and we'll show you what the operational budget is and what it consists of. So the controller's operational budget is $21,558,063. And you want to know, well, Kenneth, what does it consist of? Well, the operational budget is broken down by salaries, expenses, and equipment, and if there's also any other special costs. So if you look at the controller, you can see that we are budgeting to spend this fiscal year $19,779,681. And then other expenses, whether they're to vendors or contractors or outside agencies, we're going to budgeted to spend 1.7 or $1.8 million. And so that's what the operational budget is. So if you remember this number of 21,558, and if you go back to Exhibit G, you will see that it is right here. Right here, 21,558,063. I remember watching a CAO, a city administrative officer, Zoom webinar about the budget too, and one of the staffers said if you wanted to create a pie chart of the total budget, you should use Exhibit G and use the column here on the far right to come up with a pie chart of how much money we are budgeting to spend, so you can get the total cost. So it would be this column right here. So, of this, using the controller example, we are budgeting to spend 54.5 million, and we know that 21.5 million consists of operational expenses, right? We saw that it consists of salaries and it consists of expenses. We have no equipment or special costs. But you're like, well, Kenneth, what's the difference? There looks like there is a 33 million dollar difference, right? And those are the other costs associated with other allocated costs right here with, that the department will get from, city taxpayer dollars. And those include things like pensions, right? So if you're an employee of the city controller, you're going to get a pension and you get part of that budget as a controller employee. You get HR benefits. We also have water and electricity because we use the city and we also use the building here. As you can see here, we're budgeting to spend $1.9 million on building services that we use for our office. We are located in City Hall East, and there's also other department related costs too that fall outside of pensions, HR, water, and so those would be lumped in here. So that's those. If you add those all up, you get the other total allocated costs. And then if you add that with your operational costs right here, that's how you get the total budget. So if someone says, Kenneth, I want to know how much money the city controller's office is going to get from this budget. Like I said, go to Exhibit G as your shortcut, and then go to the very column on the right and look at the total direct cost of operations for that department. So you could check it out there. It's very interesting. We have over 40 departments. You can take a look and you can see which departments get the most money and which ones we're budgeting to spend the most on. So definitely check that out. So yeah, so just a reminder to summarize Exhibit G. This includes operational costs, which is this column right here, the appropriated budget, and also other costs that are not, salaries or expenses or equipment, but related to the department as well, such as pensions or HR benefits or water or building, that also get lumped into the total budget of that department. Okay, so I'm going to keep showing you more of the exhibits so you could get a better understanding. Really use the exhibits when the next budget drops. It's going to drop on April 20th. I say the exhibits are the first place you should look because it gives you very easy to read information. So Exhibit F, for example, tells you how much authorized city staffing we have for the fiscal year. And the cool thing is it shows you over time how many positions were authorized in the city of LA. So you could see here in the current fiscal year, we authorized to have 20,572 city employees. And then if you look up here, this 13,849, that specifically shows how much of those are our police. So in total, there will be 34,000 authorized positions. This doesn't include the proprietary funds like water and power, harbor, and airports and such. So this is only what you see here based on what you saw in Exhibit G. So you could see based on some of our main city departments, 20,000 of it is non-police, and then close to 14,000 is dedicated to police, sworn and civilian. So you could see over time how it operates. And right now, the city of LA is having a tough time filling positions, and there's a 20% vacancy across the board, especially across many departments. So it's very difficult. But just wanted to show you that this is here in the budget. I'm working myself up here. The other thing I wanted to tell you all about is Exhibit E and Exhibit D. So Exhibit D and Exhibit E, they're pretty related. And the other thing you should know about how the city budget is funded is it's funded by revenues. And there are two types of revenues that make up the city's budget. There are unrestricted revenues, and then there are restricted revenues. Unrestricted revenues are discretionary funds that could basically be spent on any city purpose. They they accrue to the general fund, and a lot of these unrestricted funds are at the discretion of the city council and the mayor on how to spend those discretionary funds. Whereas restricted revenue is it's restricted because there's a special fund and there's a special purpose as to how this revenue generated could be used, right? So if we're generating revenue from sewer services or a gas tax, or if we get a grant, those funds have to be used for a specific purpose, right? So, say you get a grant to build housing for the unhoused community. You are restricted to only use it to build housing for the unhoused community. You can't just use it on whatever you want, like something random, right? So that's what's very important to note, is that the city's budget is split between restricted revenues and unrestricted revenues. So for this fiscal year, you could see that unrestricted revenues are 6.2 million, and restricted revenues for the current fiscal year is 5.5 million, right? So, if you wanted to do a little bit of math, you can bust out a calculator and you can go like that, and you can divide it by 11,755, and you can see unrestricted revenues make up 53% of the city budget, and 47% make up restricted revenues. So just a reminder, unrestricted revenues are funds the city could spend on literally anything they want, and there's a lot of discretion on how those funds could be used, versus restricted revenues, which can only be spent on specific purposes. So if we go down here, people are like, well, Kenneth, what do we spend our unrestricted revenues on? And Exhibit E is very good for you to know. Well, these are the funds that the city can spend their money on freely, unrestricted. So as we mentioned earlier, the unrestricted revenue budget for this fiscal year is 6.2 billion, right? Now, of this amount, if you want to know, well, which departments take up how much money of it, and you could see here that the police take up the most. They take up 45.5% of the unrestricted revenues, 2.837 billion. So as you could see here, this 2.837 billion is the unrestricted part of their total. If we go down to Exhibit G, of their total 3.15 billion. So we know that their total department budget is 3.15 billion. And if you ask me, Kenneth, how much of that is unrestricted? You go up here to Exhibit E, and then we say, okay, of that amount, 2.837 is unrestricted. And then the other close to 300 million is restricted revenue. So they have to be spent specifically for a certain purpose in the police department. So as you can see here, police take 45.5% of the unrestricted revenues. Fire comes second with 15.6%. You could see here too, how much different departments get, like public works, sanitation, street services, transportation, the library, how much they get of our discretionary fund, the zoo, animal services, 44.6%. So, these discretionary or unrestricted revenues pays for a lot of the total budgets of these departments, right? So, using animal services, for example, right? It's 44.6 million is the unrestricted revenue amount. If you go down to Exhibit G and you want to know, well, how much is their total budget, you could see here that it's 50.8 million. So you could see here that of this 50.8 million, 46 million of that is unrestricted revenues. And you could tell, it's going to pay for their operations here. And it's also going to pay for some of these other costs, like their pensions and their benefits and whatnot. So, yeah, so that is Exhibit E and Exhibit D. And to summarize it up, the city of LA's budget consists of restricted revenues and unrestricted revenues. And so the cool thing about the budget is it shows the unrestricted revenues and where those funds go. Okay, let's see what other cool areas here are there in the budget. See, this Exhibit C also shows you how much we're spending for other uh, you know, uh, departments, proprietary departments like airports, harbor, water, and power. You could see here that they have a way higher. They have billions of dollars as well. And you could see if you go down to the city, that's the 11,755 billion that we saw. If you go to up here, Exhibit B, pretty much this just shows you where the money's coming from to fund our city budget. So Exhibit A here shows you how much money we're going to spend for, the operation costs, and then also, um, pensions, human resources, tax and revenue anticipation notes, which are pensions, other special purpose funds, 11.75 billion. And Exhibit B shows you, well, what is going to fund that 11.75 billion? So these are the receipts. So it's saying this fiscal year, we're going to be funded by property tax, 2.5 billion or 21.6%. Or the departmental receipts, how much money the departments get, that's going to get 10.8% of the total budget. So Exhibit B shows you where the money's coming from, and it breaks it down by general receipts and also by special receipts, right? Um, so, okay. So those were pretty much the exhibits. As you could see, the exhibits are very, very great to use. I recommend when the next fiscal year budget drops on April 20th, you go right away to the exhibits and you play with it, especially Exhibit G. And you can see how much money departments are going to get in total. Okay, so that's something about the budget that I'd like to share with you that you should use. Some other cool stuff that was highlighted in the table of contents that I could share with you that's also for useful information is performance measures. If you ever wanted to know how departments justify their budget, they have to give you metrics, performance measures, right? And you can just type in performance measures and in your search function up here, and you can pretty much see how the city or the departments justify their budget, right? So for example, animal services, their performance measures are how many number of volunteer hours were there, and you could see in the fiscal years, and it starts off in 2018, 2019 at 102,000 hours, and it drops to 2019, 2020, and then you can see that there's a COVID dip here. But you can see that they're trying to, and the project how much volunteer hours they're trying to do. So you could use this and you could see what these departments' performance metrics are. And it's really, very interesting to use. And you could see here in under the controller, under our office, we show how many number of audit reports we released in the fiscal year. So 14 5 years ago, and then it went down to 10, 9, 10, 10. So you can just see how departments are performing. That's cool to use too. Like I said, if you really wanted to learn more about the budget, you should definitely check out the table of contents and read through the first couple of pages, maybe pages 1 through 28, to really understand how the budget works, what's the process, what are some of the financial terms, and then that perfectly leads you into the exhibits, which is what we use a lot here. Okay, so the budget's huge. I'm not going to go on and on and on about it, but I hope you all who watch this can take this, especially in the recording. You all could use this to learn more about the budget. The next half, because we are at the halfway point, is to teach you all how to use the uh, the uh, the checkbook, which is our website that we created. It was created under the previous administration. And so this is a useful tool to tell you how much money the city of LA is spending on third-party vendors. So the way you access it is you go to controller.lacity.gov, and then you scroll down. You either go to data, or you could go down to here and just click on checkbook. So you click on checkbook, and this cool little function shows you a search bar, and you can pretty much type in anything, and you can search for a department, how much you're spending on a certain department, a program, a vendor, whatever you want. There are common questions. Who are the city's top vendors? What expense categories do we spend the most on? How much departments have the highest general fund spending. But here you could search pretty much anything. If you wanted to search for a vendor, see how much money we spent, you can easily just go there and click. But I'll get back to that later. But if you scroll down here, we have a spending summary of how much we've spent so far in 2022. And you could see how many transactions, financial transactions of expenses were there. And we also list out some other facts like spending by fund. So which fund had the highest spending? So the Power Revenue Fund, which is I think under DWP, which is our highest paid vendor. It's just the Northern Trust Company. Which department spent the most, and it shows you here. 2.1 billion. It shows you how many transactions by vendor, by department. So there's a whole bunch of cool information here that just shows you stats on the city. But my favorite is using this tool, searching how much money we spent. And if you were ever curious how much we spent on any vendor, you could just type it in here. So, if we just type in a random vendor here, I don't know what's a random vendor we could put in, but if we wanted to put in Verizon, I don't know, let's just type in Verizon. You could type in Verizon here, and it's going to tell you, okay, what do you want to check? The account, or do you want to check how much we spent on the vendor? So let's click on Verizon Wireless. So you could see here in last year, we spent $3.28 million on Verizon Wireless. Now, the even cooler part is, well, you want the details, right? I click on checkbook right here. So you click on checkbook, and it shows you what we spent the money on. So it shows you the ID, the vendor, what type of expenditure type is it. So it's supplies. It shows you a description, what we bought from them. So we bought 100 tablets, and it shows you which department got this. So sanitation, public works, sanitation, and it shows you what fund it came from. So it came from the general fund, and what program. It's general services procurement, and you can see how much money we spent, and then you could see here on what date was it purchased. So very useful information. You could totally see it here, how much money we spent. You can, if you wanted a filter, you could do sort descending, so you could see which ones are the highest that we've paid. So you could see here water and power. We paid for utility services for Verizon. Same thing, water and power. Looks like we paid 100,000 for tablets for sanitation. Here's water and power again, utility services for Verizon. You can see how much money we're spending there. Like for the police, we spent 47,000 on wireless voice and broadband services, including accessories. And this is as of the fiscal year 2022. So that ranges from June 2021 to July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. So the checkbook, super awesome. This site is not that mobile friendly. So if you have the opportunity to use this on your desktop, I highly recommend that you do use it on your desktop. But like I said, if you wanted to know how much money we're spending on certain vendors, or if you just wanted to, if you wanted to type in a department, let's do aging. You can also search expenses by a department. So you go to the aging department, right? So in fiscal year 2022, the aging department spent 34.36 million. And you click on checkbook here, and you could see how much money we spent and where. So, if you want to mess with the filters and sort it by by highest expenses to lowest expenses, you totally can. And you can see how much money we spent. So the highest expense for the aging department was 405,000 to California Department of Aging, and it looks like we had to return unearned grant for contract number. Da, 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 da. So you could see information there. So yeah, that like I said, I just showed you how to search expenses by department. So you could go back and you could search whatever you want. Totally good stuff. And yeah, so the other thing too, if you're more tech savvy and you know how to use Excel and you want to deal with large amounts of data, is at the very bottom here, is you could go down here and you can, let me see, I can't see it, but you can pretty much go down here and click on this where it says view and download this data. So if you go to view and download this data, this gets a little bit more technical and more technological too. So you click on view data and this gives you the raw data. Whereas on the checkbook website, you are only seeing a few columns, a few rows. But if you do and you want to view the raw data, you can see here, it's going to give you everything. It's going to give you a bunch of information. And for some people, they like having this information where they could see everything, like myself. I normally as an accountant and as someone who knows how to use Excel, I'll use the raw data. So as you can see here, this gives you way more columns, like way more columns, more accounting records, as you could see here. And you may not need all this information, but if you wanted the exact details, the exact invoice number, the program, all this stuff, you see if it was paid by check, if it was paid, what the invoice number was, the invoice date, all this stuff, you would use the raw data. And pretty much what you can do is, if you wanted to filter, you pretty much would go on the bottom part here of the checkbook and you would use the filter option. So say, like, for example, using our example, we wanted to know the Department of Aging, right? How much money we spent on the Department of Aging. So you could put some conditions. You could say contains aging right here. Type this in. You could add more conditions. Say you only wanted to know the department expenses for the Department of Aging and the fiscal year of, let's say, 2021. Right? Then what you could do is you could put in your criteria and then you can just apply it and pretty much it will update it at the top, and then you have your information up here. Looks like it's not popping up. Let me close this out. Aging. Okay. And let me apply it here. And it's gonna run an inquiry. And as you can see here, it'll show you all the expenses for that department. It's fetching the rows here. And if you like Excel and you like seeing all your data, you can export all of this to CSV and download it. And pretty much you can make your own charts, pivot tables using Excel, which is what I like to do. But if you're, you don't know how to use, Excel or how to deal with all those filters and all that data and rows, you could just use this to get your basic information here. So totally use the checkbook. I think it's a very useful tool. We update it every month. And the reason why we update it every month is because when you work in accounting of finances, you have this period called month end close. And so as you could see here, the last time we updated it in March 8th was when we updated it after we closed the month. So basically what that means is we want to make sure all the expenses and the transactions and the payments are finalized before we make it public. So that's the reason why, some people might ask, well, Kenneth hasn't been updated in 3 weeks. That's because our accounting department is going to work on closing the month of March, right? And then they're going to need the first week of April to actually do the accounting, double check the numbers, and do the accounting work. And then on April 8th, or after it's closed, it might not be April 8th, this will be updated to show those transactions. So that's why for the checkbook, it's not, it's updated monthly, and it's usually after our accountants and everyone has finalized all the financial information. So we don't want to put bad information on here. So just, just to let you all know in case people wonder why it hasn't been updated yet. The checkbook website is used a lot, so definitely use it. We have 20 minutes, so I could do one more bonus feature of our website, and let's do payroll. Payroll, everyone wants to know how much the departments make, and I will use a few minutes to talk about the payroll website. So if you visit controller.lacity.gov, you go down here to payroll, you can see how much money we're spending on payroll. So if you, same thing, there's a search function here. If you wanted to know how much money we're spending in total for the 2022 calendar year, we spent $7.5 billion. It shows you the highest compensated employees. So it looks like the highest paid city employee was a chief electric plant operator, and they made $717,000 in a year. The highest department will show you right here. So the highest payroll is water and power, followed by police. And it shows you what is the largest departments by police and by employees. And so you can see police is number one. If you wanted to search for more details, right? Say you wanted to know more about the police, right? About the highest, with the most employees, you could go here and type in police, and it could give you, the search function can show you, if you want to know information on how much it costs for this level to be a police officer 2, police officer 3, sergeant, or if you want to know just in general about the department, how much money we spent on them. So I just clicked on the department, and you could see here, it shows you some information. So this stuff on the right, you should totally use these buttons here on the right. But it shows we spent $1.92 billion just on payroll on the police in 2022. It shows you, the different bargaining groups, because each department has bargaining groups. So, the most money was spent on police officers, lieutenants, and below. So we spent $1 billion and 1.085 billion on base pay, $205 million on overtime. And you can see, other pay and personnel benefits, health and pensions and whatnot. So I say the most interesting thing here though is this average pay. If you ever want to know, well, how much on average does it pay to be a city employee? Well, you can do average pay. You can see how much you can make as a city employee for any department. So we use the police as an example. So you could see here, if you were a police officer and you were in a captain and above, your base salary is $202,000. Your average overtime is 5,000, and your average other pay is 44,000, which includes one-time bonuses and others. And then personnel benefits, it's just like health. I don't think this includes this doesn't show pensions benefits, so it's not included in here, but it does show you base pay, overtime, other pay such as bonuses or awards or lump sum payments. And I think this column right here, personnel benefits, are your health benefits. So, looking at this one too, if you are a police officer and below, a lieutenant and below, you can make on average $110,000. This is the average. And then you can see how much overtime they get. And then you have your total average pay here. So, if people wanted to work in the city of LA and they're like, how much money on average does this city employee make? You can totally take a look here and find that out. So I clicked on average pay here. But that is pretty much all I wanted to do. This was meant to be educational on how to read some of the city's budget, how to use our websites on the controller's office, such as the checkbook and the payroll website, so that people can understand where their tax dollars are being spent or how much of it is being spent, right? So, use this information wisely, use it so you can, if you wanted to talk to your council member or the mayor about funds, you totally could use this information. And I think the more people who know how to use this information, the better. I believe that knowledge is power. And the more knowledge you do know about how the city operates and works, especially in terms of the money, the more power you have. And that's what we're trying to do in office. So we try to do these educational sessions at least once a month, if not once every 2 months or more, so we can show people on how to use the city's websites, particularly our website. So I just want to say thank you all for tuning in. This is a recording, and we could share it once it's done processing. But yeah, thank you everyone for tuning in into tonight's educational session, and I really appreciate you all. So thank you again to Kim and Sophia and to our captioner Roth, I think, for the closed captioning. Thank you all for attending today. So thank you everyone. Have a nice night.